On what crimes can FBI Director Christopher Wray be indicted for in association with the attempted assassination of Trump? All those who assisted the 20-year-old gunman Thomas Matthew Crooks in the attempted assassination can possibly be indicted for treason. Right now, of all the obligations of the FBI in pursuing, investigating, and prosecuting criminals, the most important and pressing case of all the cases they have is the finding and prosecuting the accomplices of the attempted assassination of Trump. However, on July 14th, the day after the attempted assassination, the FBI posted on its website this declaration, and I quote, "The investigation to date indicates the shooter acted alone," end quote. Okay, let's translate this to regular English. We, the FBI, are blocking the investigation of the shooter's accomplices. As of today, July 18th, the FBI has not changed the status of this declaration that the shooter acted alone. Okay, since it can easily be proven that Crooks had accomplices, this FBI statement that the shooter acted alone is a knowingly false statement, and therefore FBI Director Christopher Wray can be indicted for, number one, harboring fugitives by enabling the accomplices of Crook, the attempted assassin, to avoid prosecution for the crime of treason. He's harboring fugitives. Number two, Christopher Wray can be indicted for accessory to the crime of treason for concealing the evidence of the crimes of the accomplices. Number three, Wray can be indicted for as potentially being an accomplice in the crime of treason if Wray was any way involved in planning the concealment of evidence of the treasonous crimes of the accomplices. So what evidence has become public so far that Crooks had accomplices? We got plenty of evidence, but let's start with this. Number one, shorts against the stock of Truth Social more than doubled between July 11th and 12th. This demonstrates that the people were betting that Trump would be assassinated the next day, July 13th. That means people knew that of the planning of the assassination. There were other people involved. They were accomplices. Number two, Gunman Thomas Crooks is not only seen in an ad for the gigantic international investment company BlackRock, but the roof from which he shot President Trump is on the property of AGR International, a company owned by, you guessed it, BlackRock. One of the hundreds of billions of dollars that Biden has sent to the Ukraine in military equipment, much of that went into the pockets of Lockheed Martin, which is owned part by, take a guess, BlackRock. Now that the Biden administration has encouraged the fighting, leading to much of the destruction of Ukraine, J.P. Morgan and, take a guess, BlackRock have obtained the contracts to bankroll the rebuilding of the Ukraine. The fact that a Trump re-election could impede BlackRock's planned continued blood-sucking of hundreds of billions of U.S. taxpayer dollars exposes what might be the motive of their suspicious connections with the shooter and the assassination attempt. Number three, in regarding what evidence is there that there could be accomplices to Crook in the attempted assassination? Number 3, had FBI Director Wray had an interest in prosecuting Crook's accomplices, instead of declaring the day after the shooting that, quote, the investigation to date indicates the shooter acted alone, end quote. No, he would have provided to the public the answers to the following questions. Answers, information that he knows that he's hiding from us. Here's the 10 questions that we want to know the answers for. Number 1, how and when did the 20-year-old gunman Thomas Crooks bring his rifle to the grounds? And how and when did Crooks plant his rifle on the roof? Number 2, how and when did gunman Crooks position himself? How and when did gunman Crook position himself on the roof? Number 3, if the rifle was brought to the grounds the day of the shooting, who was responsible for the perimeter that was breached by the bringing in of the deadly weapon? Number 4, alternatively, if the rifle was planted and hidden on the grounds days in advance, who informed the shooter where the stage would be set up and where to plant his gun, where to hide his gun? Number 5, who was responsible? The name of the guy who was responsible for securing the roof from which the shooter positioned himself. Number 6, how many minutes did the counter snipers have the shooter in view before the shooter fired? Number 7, who was the first personnel of the Secret Service staff to become aware of the suspect on the roof with a gun? And did they become aware before President Trump arrived on stage? Number 8, who was the general supervisor, coordinator, head of security on the grounds of the Secret Service? Number 9, who was responsible for aerial surveillance? Number 10, the last question. The general supervisor of security on the grounds had ample time to protect Trump from being exposed on stage. What was their strategy to portray themselves as if they were not aware of the threat in sufficient time? So, had FBI Director Wray wanted to prosecute Crook's accomplices, he would have made the answers to these questions public within 24 hours. Instead, the FBI website declared the next day, July 14th, quote, the investigation to date indicates the shooter acted alone, end quote. And it was still days later, this is the status that the FBI is claiming. By the way, District Judge Aileen Cannon ruled that the indictment and prosecution of Trump by Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Christopher Wray to be illegitimate. Unfortunately, until Garland and Wray are replaced, we'll have to wait for them to be prosecuted for treason.